Aloha and welcome to another episode of Sustainable Hawaii. I'm your host, Hunter Haviland, and we are joined today by Rob Barreca, farmer and fermenter at Counterculture Foods. We'll be talking about culturing good and fermenting change. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
So you are a tech man, a farmer. How did you get into that world and how did you end up in the islands?
Yeah, so I grew up around San Francisco, California, and always been interested in food from the consumer side. Being conscious of where my food comes from and eating healthily. And but I spent probably the past 15 years in the tech world doing web development. I started my own web design company, and this was in the Bay Area, and then started designing web applications. So, I was in California doing that, nothing related to ag necessarily at that time. And then actually I got a job offer to come out to Hawaii in 2007. And it was only going to be for a month, 1 month, web contract. And this was with a company called Chipin at the time. And it was founded by Carnett Williams, Olin Lagon, and Kevin Hughes. And Olin is from Kanu, Hawaii fame. And so I was like, oh, that'd be great to go out to Hawaii for a month, do a little work on this online. It was kind of before Kickstarter, it was like online crowdfunding type of deal. And so I came out here for a month. And then, of course, this project that was supposed to only take a month was going to take 2 months, was going to take 3 months. Turned out to be 6 months, 8 months, and then I kept
and then 8 years later.
I kept kidding myself, thinking, okay, just 1 more month, and then it's been almost 8 years now. Yeah, actually over 8 years.
And I would imagine, I know you're an avid surfer, so relocating to Hawaii was something I would guess is tolerable.
Yeah, that had a little bit to do with it as well. I was super freaked out, actually, coming out here to hear about the fabled North Shore, and I was definitely sketched out coming out here, but the surf and the community and the lifestyle here is what turned 1 month into 8 months.
And so where did the transition begin as you went from sort of tech from the tech field into the field?
Yeah. Our startup, as startups do, it morphed from online crowdfunding into, we had a brief foray into Facebook games. We did a vampires versus werewolves game for a while, and turned into advertising. And so it just kept morphing. And our startup got acquired by a global company about 4 years ago. So at that time, we got acquired and kind of paid my dues. And they say, okay, if you hang around for 2 more years and make the transition smooth, we'll make it worth your while. But I'd been contemplating, how I wanted to enter the food and agricultural and local food system in some shape or form for quite a while. And so when I finally kind of saw that there was an exit happening from that company, started looking into volunteering at different farms around Oahu, trying to start different agricultural projects. And just really, learning, going from sitting at a desk all day, programming and managing an engineering team, and getting my hands, dirty in the field, and just learning about the complex ecosystem that is, the soil and agriculture.
And the community surrounding agriculture. I know that's how we had actually first met was, I believe, you came out to work with us on the farm one day. And
that's right. I think, in Waihole at Ripon Farm.
Yeah. I definitely, at that point, it was introduced through Gabe, and it seemed like you were kind of popping up everywhere. It was all these different events, and you were getting your hands into a lot of things, and have now sort of transitioned that into a viable company, which is spectacular.
Yeah, it's cool to look back and see what can happen over a year or two.
And so in that process, I know you participated in the GoFarm program, right?
Yeah, so I mean, that was really instrumental. Like, once I left doing the tech work, I was finally like, okay, I have this, this blank canvas. I can do whatever I want for a little bit and try and make my way into learning about ag. And But when you're kind of just, I mean, I was just out there floundering a bit, volunteering on some farms, going online, there's a lot of resources online to learn about soil management and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely was flailing. And a friend told me about GoFarm Hawaii, which is a new farmer training program. And I heard about it, and then it didn't work out to apply that cohort or that semester. But then I applied for the next cohort, and super fortunate to get in, because that really like set my path on having like a structured, really graduated like introduction into farming, and also the marketing side of actually trying to connect with restaurants and individual consumers and learn how to market the stuff that you're growing, which is such a huge part of being a successful ag enterprise.
Mm-hmm. And so the GoFarm program and those cohorts run for what period of time, and what are the sort of operational aspects of it?
Yeah, so GoFarm Hawaii, I think they have what they call it's not ag exposure, but it's an informational meeting.
Ag Curious.
Ag Curious, yeah. That's right. I love all the names. So you go there, and it's just a one-day thing to see. Okay, they bring other ex-students or alumni in, bring other experienced farmers in to kind of tell you, okay, what is farming really about, mm-hmm. and to see if you really want to go to the next phase. So that's just an informational session, and then they do three Saturdays in a row called ag exposure, mm-hmm. and that you'll either go to other existing farms or go visit the current students enrolled and see kind of what their day-to-day is like, and you have to kind of go and volunteer and help them out to just give you a taste to see, okay, do I really want to pursue the next phase of the course? Mm-hmm. And then you go into ag, then you apply, and if you get in, you go to ag school, which is 4 months, and you kind of have like a garden-sized plot. And you learn a lot of basics, but you're not overwhelmed with a huge chunk of land. And then so that's 4 months, and then the next phase is 6 months called Ag Pro, and you get like 1/8 of an acre. There's actually 3 campuses now. There's one at for Ag School. There's Windward Community College, Leeward Community College, and Kauai now.
Oh, really?
So that's a new program just starting up. And then as part of Ag Pro, you have 6 months. 1/8 of an acre in Waimanalo, and they put your feet to the fire. I mean, you have tons of resources, tons of instruction, access to equipment, and everything like that. But you have to, be there, put in the time, and produce produce.
So it seems like it's a nice sort of graduated process where over the course of about a year, you're going from sort of getting people telling you about, sort of what to expect, and then all the way up to having the expectations on you for having a viable, essentially, company at that point. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do a 10-week CSA, so you have to deliver, to 5 customers for 10 weeks in a row and ensure that, they're happy and you're actually having a consistent supply. It was really great.
So what sort of drove your interest in making the transition from sort of managing your consumption to actually involving yourself in production?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it always had been sort of a burning interest, maybe a little below the surface, and kind of really involved in the tech world. And part of it was just being a little bit burnt out, being at a desk job. And I kind of hear this story from a lot of people that are in agriculture now. It's like a bit of that 180 where you just, that lifestyle that, sometimes, programming 12 hours a day, what it'll do to you, and make you want to find something else that to kind of reconnect with your community and reconnect with, the earth.
Meat space.
Yeah. But yeah, I keep trying to ask myself that same question, like I don't know if there's one thing that kind of triggered me into it, but I think just starting to dabble in gardening after, I was exiting the startup I was working at. And I honestly didn't think I had a green thumb, or didn't think I was going to be that interested in growing plants. Mm-hmm. I knew I was interested in the local food system in some shape or form. But when I first started just doing a bit of gardening after getting out of the tech world, and just seeing, it sounds cliche, but how magical it is to put this little seed in the ground and tend to it a little bit, and what you can produce, or just the change, the transformation that can happen.
And you've done quite a transformation of the place you live. I know, have a magnificent garden going with a whole host of crops and chickens and
some ducks.
Goods.
Yeah.
And ducks. Yeah. And so it seems like you've sort of started with that sort of seed of interest in how the sort of food system is operating and managing your decisions in that, and then sort of, I guess, gardening was your gateway into agriculture?
Yeah, it definitely was the gateway. So I think being surprised, by actually, okay, maybe I do want to have, my hands in the soil and be part of the farming. And then I think that, coupled with just, the fortuitous events of being able to have a program like GoFarm Hawaii on the island, and, being accepted and going through that, like, I just feel I have so much confidence just from that year of that program. And right now it's still free. It's funded by various grants. So, you're not having to go back to a 4-year university and throw a bunch of money into it. And you just get this vocational, just right away, put you into the soil and get you growing.
Nice. So I feel like there's a lot of discussion around farming, and one of the things that I think we've talked a little bit about in the past is sort of the jump in scales between sort of an avid gardener and a farmer, and that there's very much a difference in, I don't want to say intent, but from my perspective, there's sort of a shift in how one operates and manages those situations differently. Do you find that your farming has impacted how you garden, or vice versa? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge surprise to a lot of people, myself included. You're still growing the same plants, but just the management decisions of gardening versus farming. So I think actually the sort of the different phases of GoFarm Hawaii, where you're in ag school and you kind of have this small garden plot, I think they set it up that way so you can just get a little bit of experience, but you're making gardening decisions at that point. And then I think jumping to the 1/8 of an acre, although it's, by a lot of farming standards, that's not a lot of land, it really does give you a taste of what it's like you're using a tractor, both a ride-along tractor and a walk-behind tractor. And yeah, you're gonna be pretty bummed out if you're trying to like hand weed all 1/8 of an acre. And so that's sort of probably like the smallest size piece of land where you start to think in farming management versus kind of gardening. But they definitely do complement each other in a lot of ways. I mean, if you're trying to do more organic or regenerative agricultural methods, if you're making compost at home, the same materials and the same kind of theory behind, feeding your garden plot and feeding your farm are the same. You might need to...
Soil's still soil.
Yeah, you might need to come at them a little differently, in terms of like spreading compost or compost tea or whatever. But
and so I know that in terms of compost and amendments that you have worked in the past with some of the programming in schools supporting their composting programming. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think as after leaving the tech startup that I was in, I was dabbling in a lot of different food farming related issues, and one, tangentially, is food waste. That was something that I was very interested in. So kind of looking around, just Googling things like what's going on with food waste on Oahu, looking for volunteer opportunities to learn some stuff. And I found out about a program that Mindy Jaff was running at Pearl City High School, doing a resource recovery over there, which is basically, just making sure that the food waste is separated from the styrofoam trays, unfortunately, and making sure that doesn't enter the landfill or H-Power. It doesn't enter the waste stream.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think being able to go there and volunteer with that and just see what one high school, generates for their kind of small school lunch program, how much food waste they generate. But, with people that have good management practices of diverting that and composting it, this amazing product that you can turn that into. You know, it would otherwise be in the waste stream, but they turn it into black gold for the garden or farm.
Nice. And so it's sort of an opportunity to transition something that was maybe maligned or at least certainly not valued into a viable product. We're going to hear a little bit more after this quick break about how you're transitioning already ideal things into value-added products. So join us back after the break.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. I'm host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, which is our flagship show, which plays 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. And the supporters of that show are Hawaii Energy Policy Forum and Hawaii Energy. And luckily enough, we have representatives of both of them right here today to tell you more about what they think about the show. Sharon Moriwaki at my left is co-chair of Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, and she goes first. Sharon?
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad that we have this Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. This was 2 years ago when we started this, and we have continued it because it's so important, and there's so many developments happening across the state. And we hope you'll tune in every Wednesday, 4 to 5. It's wonderful.
And Ray is Hawaii Energy. Ray, what is your thought about the same subject?
Well, I agree completely with Sharon that we are talking about every Wednesday, 4 to 5. We talk about some of the most important subjects that are affecting the islands now and into the future. Energy, clean energy, we need it. We often run into new ideas that we had not thought about before. We did just today, and I think we're going to have more of that in the future. So come on down and watch us 4 to 5 on Wednesdays, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right, aloha and welcome back to Sustainable Hawaii. I'm your host, Hunter Hevelin, and today we're talking about culturing good and fermenting change with the farmer and fermenter of Counterculture Food and Ferments. So right before the break, we were talking about sort of that process of transformation of food waste into compost, and I know your business is also very much involved with the process of transformation from vegetable matter into fermented delicacies.
Yeah.
So how did Counterculture come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little similar to, my transition from, tech to into the food system. Just the fact that I think I was just interested from the consumer side, again, interested in hearing more about fermented foods in the news, their health benefits. Growing up, I don't think I ate too much kimchi, a little bit of sauerkraut, but I didn't, those foods and that terminology, wasn't in my everyday life. But, again, hearing more about it in the news, getting into those foods from a consumer side, but then at the same time, being at GoFarm Hawaii and growing, 150 pounds of daikon radish, and then maybe not
find something to do with that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not being so on top of my marketing skills. And fermentation or fermented foods are just a great outlet for that situation, because you take something that maybe has a shelf life of a week or so, average for fresh produce, and you can, using the microorganisms that are already present in the vegetables, just creating the right environment for them to ferment them. You preserve them, you make the food more nutritious, more digestible, and more delicious, I think.
Well, and there's certainly, a legacy around the world of I would say nearly every culture has some form of fermented food processing, for part in what you brought up in terms of extending the harvest and being able to sort of putting food by. So I think one of the famous books about it articulates in terms of, it's more on canning, I guess, but it's another preservation method.
Yeah.
But that, whether it's kimchi, sauerkraut, or even sour poi, that there's a recognized benefit in the diets of communities around the world of, the capacity of essentially these probiotic aspects to aid our digestion as well as be quite tasty.
Yeah, it's the more I started getting into, I think kimchi, sauerkraut are kind of, to me, they were the most accessible in terms of actually, fermenting and creating those fermented foods. but learning about those, tasting those, and then starting to see, okay, what does the term fermented foods encompass? And then you start to realize, oh, well, beer is, of course, a fermented beverage. All these cured meats, chocolate, generally is the
So essentially all good things in life.
Basically, you name any good food, and it's probably has fermentation somewhere in it. So yeah, again, from that 150 pounds of daikon radish, wanting to preserve that, and just, it's kind of similar to the attraction of doing regenerative agriculture or organic agriculture. You have soil with all these microorganisms, and we're only beginning to understand, the function of all these little guys. But we know that they're essential for the plant's survival and our survival. It's kind of similar to our guts. Even the best, microbiologists at Cornell are only understanding, what about 5% of the microbes in your gut actually do. And, we're outnumbered.
The human biome.
Yeah,
a growing field of interest, certainly.
Yeah, we're outnumbered by microbe cells 10 to 1. So you're 1 part human, 10 parts microbes. And
so by eating fermented foods, you're actually then helping those guys to survive.
Yeah, so
feeding the part of you that is actually mostly you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, when you ingest some probiotic food like probiotic kimchi or sauerkraut, you're actually bringing those microbes into your gut and creating an environment where the good microbiology can thrive and outcompete the bad. And that's there's parallels, to the soil too, like feeding the soil. So the good microbiology outcompetes, anything pathogenic in there versus trying to just nuke the soil with, a chemical pesticide, herbicide, or same thing with your gut and, maybe taking too much antibiotics or something.
No, it's an interesting metaphor of like the way that farming practices can sort of ape the ways that through some sort of medicines or things that are applied when needed, maybe get over-applied and can damage our insides in a similar way to how the over-application of at least certain things in agriculture can certainly damage the soil.
Totally, yeah. I mean, they're both ecosystems, both microbiomes, if you will. And so yeah, you got to manage them, accordingly, balance.
And so with Counterculture, you guys are now producing kimchi, and you're growing all of this. Or are you accessing it from elsewhere, or what are the main products, and who are your partners?
Sure. So yeah, Counterculture Food and Ferments, and our aim is to grow virtually all the source ingredients of our fermented foods. So up until now, we've grown a good amount of the cabbage, the radish, chili peppers, olena, the ginger. So really trying to grow, do diversified agriculture, which has many benefits in and of itself, and then be able to, use all the ingredients that we manage from seed to countertop. So, we're a seed to countertop seasonal fermented foods company. So right now, our last batch was a spicy pumpkin kimchi. Ooh. And it was kind of new to me. I didn't know you could ferment pumpkin or that it would be good. But yeah, we grew we did a pumpkin variety trial in Waimanalo. And then we shredded the pumpkin, used some napa cabbage, some chilies from Waimanalo and Manoa, some ginger, olena, and the sea salt we did not harvest ourselves, but I don't know, we'll get there maybe.
So can people buy these someplace, or like what's your production scale look like at this point, and where are you producing?
Yeah, so most of this was produced as part of the GoFarm Hawaii, my farm plot in Waimanalo, which was just 1/8 of an acre. So a lot of it was just testing out new recipes.
Which I was very happy to be guinea pigging.
Right on. It's my pleasure. But recently, we're super fortunate. We applied for the Kamehameha School's mahia mashup.
And so that's the partnership with Pauahi Foundation and Kamehameha Schools, which I think this round there were 3 applicants to how many pieces of land?
Yeah, so this round and the application process, I think, started about 8 months ago, and there were 3 parcels, up for grabs as part of the business plan competition. One was on the North Shore in Haleiwa, and then one was in Hilo, and one was in Kona, both on Hawaii Island.
And this is the second round, I believe?
Yeah,
there had been a previous round where there were winners that then essentially were given, in some instances, some cash or at least access to land, correct?
Yeah, so last year was the first year that the mahia mashup ran, and there were 5 parcels, kind of a similar, there was similar distribution. There was, I think, 2 on Oahu, and maybe 3 on Hawaii Island. And so...
and 1 on Molokai.
Oh, 1 on Molokai, that's right, that's right. So yeah, we applied and went through the application process, just kind of like a 2-pager about your business plan idea, and the plan was of what we were already doing at a small scale for Counterculture. Yeah, we were hoping to get the parcel on the North Shore in Haleiwa, which is 5 acres. So as part of the business plan competition, you submit a 23-page business plan about your,
What you specific number?
Well, a maximum of 23
okay,
page, but
yeah.
Yeah, just just a general business plan talking about what you aim to do, who your team is, your financials, how you intend to steward the land, because a lot of this land has been maybe fallow for 10, even more years than that. And so yeah, we wanted to grow all these diversified ingredients and create kimchi, sauerkraut, and actually tempeh as well. I didn't mention yet, which is a fermented bean and grain patty from Indonesia. Super delicious, super umami. Fry that thing up, yeah. There's nothing like it.
Tasty.
It is.
Tempting tempehs.
Yeah.
And so
I gotta write that down.
It was last week, 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, so I think about 2 weeks ago, we got the word that we were the recipients of the North Shore parcel in Haleiwa.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Is
super
in order.
Super excited about that. It was, yeah,
and there was also some other winnings that I believe came with it, right?
Yeah, and so of the 3 parcels, Kamehameha Schools and Pauahi Foundation chose 2 recipients. So we're the Haleiwa land, and then another recipient for land in Kona. And then of the 2 of us, there's actually another additional cash prize for like startup funds to get you going with equipment, startup seeds, packaging, whatever it might happen to be. So yeah, out of the 2 winners, there was a total purse of $40,000. So we were fortunate enough to receive second place and $15,000, which is, yeah, that coupled with 5 years free lease rent on the land it's humongous.
Pretty spectacular leg up.
Yeah, definitely.
And you got a giant check to go with it, which
it was my first humongous check, and yeah,
first of many, we hope.
I hope so. I'm gonna carry it around for me for life.
And so, with that 5-year lease, is that do you have an opportunity to extend, or like what's the potential down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I know Kamehameha Schools and Pauahi Foundation, they definitely want to see more land utilized, for local food. That's their mission. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely on the table after the 5 years that we can continue at regular Kamehameha Schools lease rent. So I think giving you, 5 years free and a bit of a cash prize to get you started really helps make that transition. You were talking about kind of all these transitions from gardening to farming. A lot of people in GoFarm Hawaii weren't as fortunate as me to be able to work in the tech industry and save up a bit of money to make that switch. A lot of people were managing 1/8 of an acre, managing customers while having full-time jobs too. And I'd love to see more types of transitions to allow folks to be able to fund their switch from full-time jobs to full-time ag.
All right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that nexus of tech work and agriculture after this transition.
Aloha, Yappers, and a Happy New Year. I'm your host, King Zilly. From inner city out to the platform and now the Yap Show. It's a new year, and most would say a new beginning. So this is a call to action. As we promote tech, energy, diversification, and globalism, with Think Tech Hawaii, the Yap Show is all about advocacy for effective leadership, comprehensive youth policies, programs, and access to knowledge and information for upward social mobility, especially for the historically underprivileged youth. This means we'll be looking at young people making a difference in their community, youth policies here in Hawaii, the country, and the world. We want to highlight youth programs that are meeting young people where they are, working together to accomplish a goal or tackle an issue while providing information and access to free educational content for anybody looking to learn on their own time, study for an exam, or simply refresh their memory. We do this by inviting everyday people like yourself, state policymakers, youth advocacy groups, youth programs, professionals, and so forth. But most importantly, we'll be partnering up with my new organization, causeeffect.org. More information on Cause Effect, as this website is currently in development in hopes to feature courses, seminars, tutorials, and conducting surveys that will be featured on the show. As we leave behind 2014, I wish I could say we leave behind issues such as police brutality, youth violence, education, economic mobility, and so many other hot-button topics that made 2014 a difficult year. So what does it mean for the new year? What does it mean for youth policy? What does it mean for Hawaii as a whole? And most importantly, how does it affect you and your community? We want you to tune into the YAP Show at 3 p.m. Friday and find out. Aloha.
All right, aloha, and welcome back to Sustainable Hawaii. We are talking today about culturing good and fermenting change with the farmer and fermenter of Counterculture Foods, and Rob Barreca. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And so you were just telling us, so Counterculture, you guys now have 5 acres of land, a giant check, and a big opportunity. What are your next steps, or what's the sort of transition process as you go from working in Waimanalo to now landing with this land here out on the North Shore?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big jump for us, you know, going from 1/8 of an acre to 5 acres. We're super excited about the jump. So yeah, you know, we just kind of, our plots in Waimanalo are tilled and they're ready for the next cohort in GoFarm Hawaii. So kind of in transition from Waimanalo to the North Shore, and in the process with Kamehameha Schools of becoming, you know, a lease tenant of the land up there, and kind of needing to do a lot more planning of, you know, planning out our crop production, the layout of the farm, a lot of infrastructure as well as equipment. You know, at 5 acres, we definitely need access to a tractor, and that's been kind of one of the other amazing things about being part of the Mahia Matchup business plan competition, and kind of getting plugged into the Kamehameha Schools agricultural network. Is that there's all these other farms around there, and you know, Oahu's a small isolated island, so it doesn't make sense, you know, for every person on 5 acres to buy their own tractor or, you know, try and ship something over from the mainland. So talking with last year's recipient of a neighboring parcel, which is Holo Holo General Store, and they've been super great about infrastructure sharing, you know, for wash stations and stuff like that.
Nice.
As well as kind of going together on a equipment co-op for sharing a tractor. And also another Kamehameha Schools landowner, Ted Nakamura, a longtime North Shore organic farmer, has been super gracious about, you know, hooking us up with sharing his equipment and expertise. So yeah, really being plugged into the ag community has helped a lot. So I think, you know, getting involved with Kamehameha Schools and the Mahia Matchup, also getting involved with GoFarm Hawaii. We have a lot of resources and connections through GoFarm Hawaii. So you can find out, you know, at gofarmhawaii.org, I believe. And yeah, I think those two resources together were pretty huge for us.
I think for me, it's been great to see in the past few years sort of this very necessary ecosystem of support coming about to, you know, while there's been sort of rhetoric and interest, at least topically, of, you know, diversify our agriculture and more farmers, and, you know, everyone's sort of familiar with the statistics of essentially our producers aging out in the near future, and the need for training new farmers and young farmers. And so I think it's really important. It's particularly spectacular to see that in such short order, you've gone from, you know, essentially a dabbling sort of person who was intrigued by it to now essentially running what will be a 5 acre parcel. Most importantly though, where do we find these countercultured goods?
Oh, right. So right now, you know, we're still just have a couple small batches from the Waimanalo plots, but at the nearby Waimanalo Market Co-op, they have a farmer's market on Saturday from 9 to 2. So you can find some spicy pumpkin kimchi over there and test your taste buds.
I think I'll have to go find some of that.
All right.
I still have a little bit left in the previous jar of kimchi.
I'll give you some later, man.
All right, yes. That's why I brought you on.
It pays to know.
So one thing that we were discussing earlier is sort of the meshing of these two parts of your life, right? So there's that work in technology, and now this work in agriculture. And I feel like there's also, not just in you, but more broadly, a sort of a coming together, a nexus of those two fields. And I know a little bit of your work is also focused on kind of wedding technology and agriculture. So what does that entail?
Yeah, so I didn't want to leave over 15 years in the tech world and kind of all that experience and knowledge and connections that I learned doing all the web application development and being in that business. I didn't want to necessarily just turn my back on that. A, because I think it's so useful, and B, I'm still interested in that, in sort of kind of non-invasive uses of technology. And I feel like in food and agriculture, I think a lot of people have been trying to see how the internet and smartphones and web apps and stuff like that can help farmers. And so it's great. There's a ton of energy and focus there. So as I was transitioning into food and farming and leaving my tech startup job, I still was interested in that, and so looked around. Okay, are there any sort of existing website platforms that connect maybe small farmers directly with restaurants and other kinds of consumers, and make it easier to do crop planning, make it easier to accept payments for crops and handle logistics, and there's just so many
potential avenues.
Yeah, I remember hearing it a lot, getting into farming, like, oh, farming is so hard, and it is very hard, but it's not exactly hard in the way as I thought. I mean, the manual labor and stuff for a sissy computer programmer like myself, that was hard transition. But I think it's way harder just in handling the crazy complexity that is not just growing vegetables and the complexity of the soil and the unpredictability of weather and conditions and pests and disease and all that stuff, but then handling crop planning and harvesting and marketing, which is so huge. So it's more just
customer management and
everything. I mean, just the brain power and the tools that you really need to be efficient on that and be able to focus on growing a little bit more. So yeah, I started looking around for existing technologies, and there's some, if anybody has lived in San Francisco or LA or New York, there's a website, Good Eggs, which kind of connects, makes it easy for farmers or producers to list their produce, and they aggregate and have pickup days, and they're doing delivery now. FarmiGo, City Sprout, there's a lot of different technologies, and I'm contacting all these companies like, hey, I'm out here in Oahu, one of the most isolated place on earth, basically. We could really use these tools, and no one was really, ready to start up a new chapter, say, of like Good Eggs out here. And then I found one website technology called Local Orbit, and it's software as a service. So you can basically, pay a licensing fee and create an instance of their website, and that allows producers to list their produce, list the quantities that they'll be able to harvest that week. So if I'm a producer, I'm in the field, I have my smartphone out, and this is what we did at GoFarm Hawaii for the people that wanted to participate in this trial. I have my smartphone out, I'm in the field, and I'm estimating, okay, I'm gonna have 20 pounds of kale that I could harvest in the next 3 days. So I have my smartphone out, I go to the Local Orbit website, I update my kale quantity to 20 days, and then that evening, the market manager, which is me right now, would send out an email to the buyers on the system. They get an email seeing what all these 10 farmers have available to harvest that week. They can pre-order the produce, and then for a specified pickup day, say like on Thursday. And so they pre-order the produce, they pay with their credit card. The farmer's assured that they're paying for this, and the farmer can harvest to order. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it basically lets the farmer, it cuts out all the guesswork, and the buyer as well. So they're sure that, okay, this transaction is going to happen, and they get the freshest produce possible, because I can know exactly who needs what amount of what, harvest it that morning, and in an hour, have it aggregated and delivered to a pickup point. And so it's just, yeah, it just simplifies it on both the buyer and the seller's end. And yeah, it results in just better, more nutritious food, better tasting food.
And definitely streamlines, cuts out all of the middlemen, right? So as a farmer, you can then conceivably use this technology through whatever device you have and have somebody showing up at the farm gate ready to harvest or ready to buy.
Definitely, yeah. So we're trying to, ensure that all the farmers, they're in control of updating their produce, and it does take, a market manager maybe to, control a little bit of it. But yeah, it does cut down. Before that, we were basically 10 of us are texting, different restaurants or calling them and asking them what they want and cross-ordering, and there's just, all kinds of confusion. So it really, yeah, I like that it streamlines it, it makes it clear, and the end product, is just better for that.
Do you feel like farming, as it sort of grows in the state, will embrace technology more than it maybe has in the past? Or is there, if you were to sort of like forecast the future of sort of agriculture and technology, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like everybody I talk to, at least about, using the web to
Internet of Things.
The Internet of Foods. Everybody is really excited about this, both from, the restaurant side to the market side to the farmers and value-added producers as well. So I think the interest is there. Like any new technology, it takes a little bit to kind of trust it and be able to rely on it and not just kind of get a little squeamish and then just go back to the old way of, calling the big distributor or, calling each farm directly or something like that.
Which can definitely occupy a fair amount of time from my experiences.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, like I was saying, how farming is hard in those ways that I didn't think it would be. I mean, the marketing side and just the ups and downs of, being a good communicator and sometimes not so good communicator with your potential customers. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, a lot of, storing stuff in your brain. So yeah, again, this alleviates, a little bit of that headache, I think. So I definitely see a big increase in technology as more startups in the mainland and around the world come out with better technology for crop planning and all these things. So yeah, you can have your smartphone, and you know what? In GoFarm Hawaii, there's people of all ages, not just young people that are taking the program, people of all ages, and some people that are retired from their old jobs and want to get into producing food. And you know what? They're the ones that are almost most excited about embracing the new technology because they know how much time and effort it's going to save them.
And so I know that there have been other technologies working towards developing sort of farm dashboards where you're able to have sensors and things like that set up around your farm so you can be tracking everything from soil moisture to whether it's rain, and have sort of like live management of irrigation and a variety of other things. Have you worked with those at all or find there to be a utility in tools like that? Or
I definitely think so. I haven't worked with those personally, but I've read a bunch about those sensors that you can like plug in the soil to detect soil moisture and a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's, yeah, I guess in the long view, I definitely see all of these things communicating with each other. And like this local orbit, this online food marketplace, they're soon gonna open up an API. So people that maybe are designing web apps or something to read the sensor or as part of crop planning, like I think the future could be, you do a crop plan on your smartphone or on your desktop or whatever, and all your produce, it has an estimate of kind of what is going to be able to harvest when. And so, I see, further streamlining definitely in the future. Super excited about it.
Well, I'm also excited.
Cool.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Looking forward to future ferments and coming out and seeing your new farm as it grows. Once again, Rob Barreca, the farmer and fermenter of Counterculture Foods. Today we've been talking about culturing good change and tasty gladness. So join us next week for Sustainable Hawaii, the show about making the transition from being individual consumers with rights to building communities of producers with responsibilities. Aloha.